long as they can convince people, as in insurance companies, they can terrorize parents into subjecting their children to it. The child has no recourse.
Back then, they needed the parents' permission, not informed consent.
Okay.
Oh, something is wrong with your baby. Don't worry, we can fix that. This is a quick, easy operation. Yeah, the part
You want your child to be normal, don't you?
The part they didn't tell them was the boy had a very small penis. So they took off the penis and told the parents that they were a girl.
And it doesn't sound like the parents were even informed.
In many, many cases, they were not.
So these medical interventions aren't really helpful, it doesn't sound.
They're not.
No, they're crap. It makes money. That's all it does.
What do you really know about people who were born transgender? Have you ever met someone who's transgender? Well, if you're like me, you're curious, but hesitant to ask questions. Well, welcome to Demystifying the Transgender Journey. In our conversations with people who were born transgender, their families, friends, and the professionals who support them, we ask probing questions and discover insightful and educational answers. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. Now let's get right into today's episode. I have a quick content note on this episode. This episode is about intersex. It includes the candid discussion of intersex anatomy, sexuality, functions of the human body, medical procedures performed on intersex infants and children, and the physical and emotional impact of those interventions. We're sharing these topics for educational and understanding purposes, but if you find certain portions of this episode challenging, listen when and how it feels right for you. And these discussions reflect our lived experience, our guests' lived experience, and their personal perspectives. So while we'll be discussing medical topics, this episode is not intended as medical advice. So welcome back to Demystifying the Transgender Journey, where our goal is to educate people by humanizing the transgender and today the intersex experience by sharing real stories told by real people. I'm Lynn Murphy, author, speaker, leadership coach, and founder of Women Who Push the Limits. And I'm the cisgender half of this team. Joining me is Wendy Cole, a gender diversity consultant and speaker who transitioned at age 67. Wendy is living proof that it's never too late to embrace your true self. And today's episode is one of many that people really didn't realize they needed, because we're talking about something that's everywhere in our culture and yet almost invisible in our education: intersex. So we encourage you to stay curious, especially when this conversation asks you to rethink what you were taught and what you think you know. We're honored to have two powerful guests today who are both intersex at birth and who have spent years sharing their stories and their expertise plainly, compassionately, and intelligently about biological sex diversity and what it means to live in a body that the world insists must fit in a simple binary. First, we're joined by Vickie Boisseau, the Western New York Director of Organization Intersex International, a published author and a certified peer support specialist. Vickie collaborates with medical institutions and universities to educate professionals and the public about the lived realities of intersex people, especially the parts that have been minimized, misunderstood, or deliberately hidden. We're also joined by Jim Costich from Western New York, an intersex gay retired medical lab professional with years in pathology, a speaker who brings deep knowledge, real-world experience, and humor. Jim appears in the documentary Intersection, Sexion, and is a writer. You can find his essays, including Queerer Than That, sci-fi, on his Substack. And to prepare you to meet Jim today, it might be helpful also that you know that he reads medical textbooks for fun. That gives you a clue to who Jim is today. So if today's conversation doesn't challenge you to think about what you know, we're not doing our jobs. Our conversation will also give you clarity, humanity, and a bigger lens with which to view the world. So settle in, because Vickie and Jim are here and they are about to kick the door open on the topic of intersex. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Vickie, it's so wonderful to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Jim, you are someone who's very interested in semantics. And so before we get into your life story and Vickie's life story, let's clarify, because this is the first thing that we've been doing for our audience about intersex. So let's clarify some terms and concepts and kind of get our audience up to speed so they can listen to us intelligently today.
The word intersex is relatively new. As a matter of fact, it's only really been around since about the 1970s. We have been hidden as an entire form of human being behind language of pathology. And so we were described, starting in France and then England and then the United States, as a series of pathologies. What is wrong with you? That you are not strictly male or female. Instead of, oh, we have males, we have females, and we have people in the middle. That's reality. That's the truth. But that's not what you've been taught. If you have been taught anything, it is that there are no hermaphrodites, and there are in human terms. A hermaphrodite is someone who can impregnate their own sex because there only is one sex. They have male parts and female parts, and they trade. I'll fertilize yours if you fertilize mine. You only have to go as far as your backyard. Garden snails define this.
Mm-hmm.
They're everywhere, but they're not mammals. In mammals, that doesn't take place. However, intersex does. The idea, or rather the ideology, because it's not a scientific idea, there's no evidence to support it, is that human beings and all mammals come in a strict anatomical and physiological and genetic binary. You are either or. Sit down, kids. I got something to tell you. It's not either or.
Mm-hmm.
It's all and. And our existence sitting here right in front of you proves this. And so does the existence of every other intersex individual out there. Well, that's got to be incredibly rare. No, it isn't. It's very common.
Do you have numbers on that percentage of
No.
population? Because
No, we don't. This is the truth. The truth is we've been deliberately hidden.
mm-hmm.
The reason we're talking about semantics right now is because we don't have the language to talk about it because the language doesn't exist. That doesn't mean we don't exist. It means the language isn't there, and that helps hide us. That means we can't be counted. Now, people have tried, but you cannot count what has been deliberately hidden
Mm-hmm.
and what has been defined out of existence.
And even hidden from people who were born intersex.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Especially those who were born intersex. One of the favorite things that was performed during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2026, excuse me, is that we lie. Your baby has a hernia. We have to fix that hernia right away. There go the testicles. We're going to raise her as a girl. Girls aren't allowed to have testicles. So if we raise her as if she is a girl, as if she is a female, did you get that? There's your semantics. We already started that this person is not female. This person is not a girl, but we're going to raise them as if they are. What is this person? Intersex. They're in between.
So they're not raising them as a boy because
They're a boy.
Look like a boy, has testicles, but also
not because of anything that you managed to observe quickly at a run between their legs. Quick look, let's go. They
deeper
had
than
48
that.
hours to fill out my birth certificate, guys. 48 hours. I'm 68 years old. They still don't know.
And I understand Vickie's birth certificate was something different too.
Oh, a Mod Podge. They started out with an X. Well, no, but we'll figure it out when we do, then we'll get rid of the X. You could do that in Massachusetts. You couldn't do it in New York. What has that got to do with lived reality? What's that got to do with biology? Isn't that just societal politics? Yes. And again, semantics.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to talk about sex when we talk about sex. We need to be able to talk about anatomy when we talk about anatomy, physiology when we talk about physiology. One
Right.
of the things that we do in our society is prevent that.
Mm-hmm.
My mother went to pre-med, and she used to tell me that there wasn't a single woman in the neighborhood that she could mention the word clitoris to who knew what it meant. That the only word that women had for that very important phallic organ was down there.
And what era was this?
She's talking about when she graduated college, which would have been 1955.
Wow.
And this is what she related to me, down there. But she was telling me the story about women she was still talking with in the 60s. And it would take this enormous explosion of feminism before women would say, damn it, I want a word.
Hmm.
But it's still not okay to use it. People go, horror, 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 horror. No, I'm sorry. That's not good enough.
Well, and it indicates that there's something bad or something hidden about that part of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore,
That's the message, the subliminal message we get.
that
with
is the subliminal message. And that takes us to the societally agreed upon and pushed mutilation of infant and children genitals, which we will get into later.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a very big part of the intersex story, is what was done to us instead of for us.
Mm-hmm.
Vickie and I are not going to talk a lot about the pathologization terms, but we should mention this quickly. There are over 47 of them, and they're increasing all the time as we are further and further pathologized.
You're talking about diagnoses? Is that...
I'm talking about diagnoses.
Variations.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to say it's variations, but you don't need
Yeah.
to do that with variations. So there's a variety, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you have to have diagnoses, again, semantics. Were you diagnosed male at birth? What is your sex
male?
diagnosis? Were you diagnosed female at birth?
I don't think we talk like that.
I don't think we talk like that, but we talk like that about intersex children and adults, and we need to stop. And with that, I'll stop.
Okay, so here's one other question for our audience who is used to hearing us talking with guests who are born transgender. What's the difference between or similarities among people born transgender and people born intersex?
It depends on the intersex person. I give a whole talk on this. In fact, I just did on Adolescence in Buffalo. Similarities and differences with intersex and trans people.
Well, give us a little synopsis today, just briefly.
Okay, me and my late wife, she's a trans woman, and we know there's a lot of similarities between us. I've had sex change operations, she had. I changed my name, she did. Changed the gender marker, she did. Took hormones, she did. The only differences with all that is you take the order that you do it in. Usually surgery is the last one. Lift it over for me. First thing, surgery, 8 months old.
Ooh.
And I was 8 months old, they changed my gender marker from X to M. My name from Victoria, that's my dad's name, to my dad's name, Victor. Then they started hormone replacement.
At what age?
I was 6th grade, so about 12, 13-ish.
Okay.
A little bit later on, of course, now I've had like 10 surgeries at that point. Most trans people have maybe 1, 2. I've had a total of 14. And unfortunately, you may have to have a 15th.
So before we get too deep into your story, let's let me see if I get this correct. So the difference between being born transgender and being born intersex basically comes down to anatomy, physiology.
Basically comes
Yeah.
down to consent.
That's the big
She
one.
had no consent. She had no information. She was less than a year old when they began to cut.
Mm. Horrible.
That's
And
common.
are they still doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Rate of 5 a day
Yes.
in
At
this
least.
country.
At least.
5 per day.
Oh,
And the same people are horrified to think about anything being done with a transgender infant or baby or child.
Yeah. Nothing is done with them. It's all done to us.
mm-hmm.
But you see, that's where the semantics comes in.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know what intersex is or that
Mhm.
we exist. And so when they hear intersex and don't know what it means, they think it's just another word for trans. And so they think that the people who are being carved up are trans, and they're not.
Mm-mm.
No one does genital surgery on infants and children unless they are intersex. But
Ooh.
because people don't know that intersex exists, they're terrified. And they think this is all being hidden. Well, it is,
Mhm.
but it's part of persecuting both the intersex and the trans. It's persecution. It's
Mm.
diabolical, it's deliberate, and it's happening.
It's all because we don't fit within the culture.
You're different.
Exactly.
Within the binary, it's got to be either or, like you said, instead of
Either or. Doesn't exist. It's all and.
because some limited brains can't comprehend that there's a spectrum, that there's something other than either or.
Creation is not allowed to exist. DEI,
Mhm.
get rid of it! Diversity, get rid of it! It's a threat. That's silly.
Well, Jim, do we want to get into your story first? Let's hear the stories and we'll learn about this.
I'm Jim Costich. I was born in Rochester, New York at Strong Memorial Hospital in 1957. I'm the eldest of 3 boys, and I was born to very liberal, free thinker parents. My mother was a closeted Jew, and my father was a free thinker who had walked away from Christianity, Episcopal Christianity, because it didn't interest him. It just didn't. Most of the time, the second a child is born, they take a quick look between their legs and say, boy, girl. That doesn't answer a lot of questions like what's on the inside.
Right.
And that's how a lot of intersex people get lost, but not me. You see, take one look between my legs and you don't have the first idea.
So you baffled the
Right
doctors?
in between.
Mm-hmm.
No, the doctors had no idea. Nobody had any idea. They looked at me and said, we'll get back to you. We have no idea what this is.
Hmm.
They sent me home, told my parents to dress me in yellow and green, call me a nickname, it was Cookie, and see if growth and development didn't clarify my facts any. And it did. I'm right in between. I'm neither male nor female. I don't have testicles. I don't have ovaries. I have bits and pieces of both sexes, mostly male. Except I discovered something else when I was 44 years old that is mostly female, but we'll get to that later. So my parents pretty much let me pick my gender. By the time I was 3, I was calling myself a little boy. Everybody else was calling me a little boy. I was following my father around like a dog. So boy it was, man I became.
And you felt comfortable in that presentation?
Completely, utterly. I never questioned it otherwise. I
Okay.
grew up in a neighborhood that was all boys. I had 2 brothers. And because I fit, I was not conflicted. I didn't question.
If you looked at your brothers or your brothers looked at you, anatomically, you looked similar?
No.
No. So were they questioning?
Oh, you bet.
Were you questioning?
No.
Okay.
That was just you.
That was just me. This is just my penis And I don't have testicles
Mhm.
because I was born without them. And so the only way I can become a father is to adopt. I was told that when I was 4 years old. And I was bound to adopt, and I did.
Oh, you
I'm
did.
sterile. I'm gay. I raised 2 children, both of them handicapped. So there.
Congratulations. Thank you.
But that's to respond to the accusation that we can't be parents or we shouldn't be parents. Can't prove it by me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can't prove anything by me. So they knew because I didn't have testicles, and everybody was crazy.
Hmm.
Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Doctors looking. Then I came down with a acute abdomen at the age of 5. They tell me that they took my appendix out. I don't know if they did or not. It could have been testicles that didn't descend and they didn't want to tell me because they thought I'd go crazy. That was one of the things they tell intersex people. And parents, they tell the parents, if you ever tell the truth, your child will go nuts.
I mean, this is after the doctors have made the decision
And done the surgeries.
And done the surgery.
One way or another to
Yeah.
fit the binary. Okay.
If it's binary. But in this case, it wouldn't have been that. It would have been that I got a torsion as a testicle tried to descend and it had to be stopped because it was going to die.
Yeah. So why didn't they tell you that?
Because it was too horrible. I don't know because I will never know. You see, I cannot know what I was born with or without if it isn't still here.
And your parents weren't told.
And my parents weren't told, or my parents didn't tell me. They're both dead.
Oh.
That isn't going to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
What did happen was that I wasn't going to have puberty. When you're born without testicles or ovaries, or they cut your testicles or ovaries out before puberty, you don't have puberty, period.
So then how do you develop? What happens?
You don't. And that means people used to die young. And that began to happen to me. I stopped growing. I became severely anemic. My immune system tanked. I started getting really sick. And everything was going to hell in a handbasket. It was awful. But in any event, my parents were, we got to find him an endocrinologist. Surely there's got to be something they can do. And there was. At that point, there was. But I was sent to a gender clinic in Buffalo first, where I was tortured.
How old were you then, Jim?
14.
Wow.
That is where I was told that after they had done all kinds of psychological testing to try to figure out why I had identified as a boy, when they were going to begin to take all children born like me, cut their phallic organ off, and call that a girl. I'm sorry, girls are born with a clitoris. A girl or a woman is not minus a penis. She's with a clitoris. And a clitoris and a penis are homologous organs. Look it up. They have exactly the same things. They are exactly the same things. The difference is how much erectile tissue there is. Not even a river runs through it. That's not true because there's hypospadias. I have hypospadias. She had hypospadias. That means that the hole isn't at the end. It's somewhere in between or all the way back at the female position. It's common.
And it still works.
Oh, yeah.
It works just fine, but now they cut them up and then it doesn't work because we cannot create a urethra surgically. So it always fails. It's just how long will they suffer before it does.
And I go back to the word you used that there were psychological testing.
Yes, they wanted to find out whether I would test as more female or male. They thought this was something they could test.
Oh, that's how they were doing it. Okay.
Anke Earhart, one of the henchmen of John Money.
Hmm.
John Money's the guy who had twins, one of whom had a botched circumcision. All circumcisions are botched, but that's a topic for another day. Had a botched circumcision that completely ablated his penis. It was gone. John Money said, I can fix him. If you lie to him well enough, I can turn him into a girl.
Oh, that gives me chills. Oh.
Now, John Money was not a surgeon. He was not a urologist. He was not even a psychiatrist. He was just a psychologist. And he was a con artist. He wanted to make money doing this. And he did. He spread the ideology from Australia to England, and it landed in Boston. Vickie was in Boston. I was in Rochester. They don't do that in Rochester, but it jumped over Rochester, hit Buffalo for a little while with Anke Earhart, and then she took off for Chicago, which is where the big anti-intersex mishigas has been going on. And Buffalo started with the Harry Benjamin standards of care for the trans and forgot about the intersex. There you go. That's the history. My history is, after they made my life hell and I was suicidal, they announced that in their clinic, they would not allow somebody like me to go from being a boy to a man unless my father would submit me to experimental surgery to make it possible for me to stand to urinate, because all men must stand to urinate or they can't be men.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's the rule, right? Yeah.
That's their supposed rule. I got news for you.
Yeah.
My son can't stand to urinate. My husband could not stand to urinate. He was missing a leg.
And maybe someone wants to sit down to urinate. What's the problem?
That was my first husband. He said he drained better.
Yeah. So your parents didn't go for this, did they?
My father leapt out of his seat and bellowed, "You idiots haven't the first idea what makes a man or a woman or a woman. You're going to stop treating my son like a guinea pig." Grabbed me by the hand, yanked me down the hall.
I see where you get your enthusiasm.
Good for him.
Where do you think I get it?
Yeah.
Or rather, I come by it honestly, I suppose. My father took me to an endocrinologist that his physician had suggested for me. And that endocrinologist offered me the blue pill or the red pill.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy being a boy? Do you want to grow up to be a man? Are you unhappy being a boy? Would you rather grow up to be a woman? Because I got news for you. I'm pretty sure I can give you the choice. Right here is estrogen. Right here is testosterone. This is the girl potion and this is the boy potion. Which way do you want to grow up? You need to grow up. I only want to grow up. And I grew up like everybody else. I looked like I was 10. I was 15 at that point.
At least he was giving you a choice.
What a novel concept.
Like it might matter to me, seeing as I didn't have the anatomy for male or female. I didn't have the physiology or the genetics for male or female. I can only be all, and that's all I've got. He gave me a choice so that my body could grow up to be
Healthy adult.
healthy. Can you imagine? Healthy. My health was taken into consideration. This does not happen. This does not happen with trans children. It does not happen with intersex children. It does not happen with LGBTQI children. What happens is they and we are forced to conform in any way it is possible to force us to a binary that we will never fit, and that we must lie and act out our whole lives so that people can pretend that reality fits their fantasy instead of setting their fantasies aside and embracing reality.
So other people are comfortable regardless of whether you are comfortable in your body with who you are.
That's the whole reason for the binary rules.
Exactly. Entirely.
So people can put that in the box and be just very comfortable that there's nothing getting out of that box.
Right. They won't allow anyone out of that box. This is literally, they just assume kill you as look at you. I'm sorry, but that's the truth of it. And they do. They kill people every day. And they mutilate the ones they don't kill. Except for those of us who didn't get mutilated and who forced our way into the family of humanity, threw ourselves onto the couch and put our feet up on the table.
Good for you.
Oh,
Now, though,
Yeah.
that's me. That's a lot of other intersex people, and I know thousands, because I've been doing this advocacy work now for 37 years.
Oh,
37 years, and nobody knows
long.
what. This last year, we did a talk at a university. People who had just been through a feminist class on gender. There was one person in the audience who had ever heard the word intersex and knew what it was.
wow.
One person. But for us, that's the first time that had ever happened. That somebody knew. We talked to medical students, nursing students, separately and then now together for over 30 years. And this was the first time someone in the audience knew what we were.
Oh, that's frightening. And that's where you said earlier, we've got to talk about these things.
And we can't talk if we don't have the words, but we can't stop what we refuse to face. And so it sounds really good for me to stand up and say, they didn't get me. And I know hundreds of people that didn't get. How about the ones they did? So now I'll hand over the biology lesson through my story to Vickie.
And Vickie's story is quite different from yours.
Oh, yeah.
The opposite of mine. Diametric opposite.
Okay. As long as I can use the medical terms and describe it. They took one look between my legs. So a small penis with subcortical hypospadias, which is below the head. The hole was.
That's where the urine escapes. Is that
right?
The urethra. Thank you. Okay.
The end of the urethra, yes. And they took a look at that, and right below it, there was no bulge. There was a little bulge where it would have been. But under that, there was also a small hole. My vagina.
And
all of the above.
That was visible?
Yeah, all of the above, pretty much. And when I did the last surgery, unfortunately, I had 14 failed hypospadias repair surgeries.
Because they don't work.
Yeah, because they never work. Unfortunately, the last one, the urethra was so clogged up with scar tissue, I couldn't pee. So the night before the surgery, the last corrective surgery, I was rushed into the ER. They poked a hole in to at least drain out my, drain up the bladder, since they knew I was going in the surgery next morning. And that held me for the night anyways. The next morning, she did the surgery, and unfortunately, she could not save the penis. She had to do an amputation.
How old were you then?
There's a 2005.
Okay, so you were an adult.
2005.
She'd already gone through an entire childhood.
As a boy.
As if she were a boy, but not as a boy. She was in and out of surgeries. 14 surgeries every summer and sometimes school years. She didn't grow up. She was a patient.
When was the first surgery, Vickie?
8 months old.
But they really didn't have to do that surgery.
I didn't have to.
It was just
fine.
You would have been just fine if they had left you alone.
And in fact, I missed my penis.
Okay.
Yeah, the last surgery, 47. I was 47.
Hmm.
Waiting for the emergency surgery, as I said the night before. Well, she had to amputate. I know it's a very high possibility that they had to amputate, so I was preparing for it.
Wow.
She also took out my ovotestes. I thought they just, testicles they didn't drop. That's what I thought. That's what I was told, anyways. So when they yeah, they know.
You can't tell.
So when they took them out and she biopsied them, and you have ovotestes. I'm like, no.
She'll
So what's-
biopsy them. She made
what's-
slides.
Yeah,
That's
she
that's
made
a
slides.
pathology thing. I made hundreds
What's-
of thousands of them. I know what I'm talking about.
Ovotestes, is that different than testes?
Yeah, ovotestes.
Ovotestes are, in fact, just exactly what it sounds like. Part of the
Okay.
organ is ovarian, part of the organ is testicle. Now, sometimes it's like this, and it goes from cell to cell, but sometimes it's areas of testicular tissue, areas of ovarian tissue. What they don't ever do is produce active workable gametes. You don't get eggs that work, and you don't get sperm that work. So there's no fertility in these people. They are not male or female because they can't produce eggs or sperms. They are non-reproductive from before birth. That was the DES working on her. Now, it also gave her a little something else that came along with those "you'll be a man or die trying" hormones.
So we're going back now in history. At what point did they give you hormone?
About the 6th grade, they gave me testosterone to try to make a man out of me.
In 6th grade. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was like 13, 14, somewhere around there-ish. Because I make a man, because I was raised a boy, so I had to be a man. Well, since I have partial androgen insensitivity, which means my body is mostly insensitive to testosterone, non-reactive to it.
Okay.
Well, now there's a whole bunch of testosterone running around my body, and I couldn't use it. So what my body does, and what anybody does in that case,
anybody's body will do this.
Yeah, is what's the word? Emulsifies.
It aromatizes from
Aromatizes.
testosterone to
the
estrogen, because estrogen is a smaller molecule. It's easier for the liver and kidneys to get it out of the bloodstream.
So what it does is, so they gave me testosterone, I get fits.
And for those
She
of
got an entire female puberty, including breasts.
So for people who are just listening and not watching, you indicated that you got breasts.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
From taking testosterone.
From being given testosterone. Do you see what we mean when we say all and, not either or? You can't enforce it even when you try. It's not true.
Androgen insensitivity, like all the other ones, don't just affect the genitals, but the whole body. I have no body hair.
No body hair.
No body hair.
None, as you can see.
None.
Okay.
Very tiny hands. My
Okay.
mother was this tall, and I get the same size hands as she.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'4".
Okay.
And my shoe size are, well, I took a men's 5.
Wow.
Wow.
If you can even get a 5.
Yeah, you go in the kids department.
Yeah.
There should be a woman 6.5.
But it doesn't fit. I mean,
So then once you started developing with estrogen that they thought was going to be testosterone, then what happened?
it got ugly.
Hey, yeah, I get pretty good, exactly. Well, they threatened to take off my breast. I'm like, no, you're not.
Oh, more surgery. Wonderful.
More surgery.
More surgery.
Yeah.
Just keep cutting and cutting and cutting. Put that goddamn knife down.
Bodily mutilation.
Yes.
That's their answer to it. You're going to be a boy or else. My body was not into that.
She wasn't going to do that.
No. But the thing is, growing up, I study men and women, or had to, did. Going walk around. I studied the way they walk, the way they talk, body language. What do they talk about? How do they talk? All that kind of stuff.
And why were you studying so hard?
Well, to live as a boy.
So you knew how to present yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as a boy, yes.
Ah.
But
She
also,
wasn't one. She had to learn to sell herself
yes.
as
Mhm.
if she were one. You see?
Mhm.
That's why I said she was intergender. To clarify that, she did not have an internal sense of being a boy or a girl. She had an internal sense of being intergender as well as being intersex. And so she had to put on an act, and that was the studying she did.
The good thing is, no matter what I wear, I can pass myself as a man or a woman. Just by changing my mannerisms, my voice, my inflections, all that.
And do you do that?
Oh, yeah. I've had
Tell-
many times.
Tell us about that.
I've done drag queen performances. I've done drag king performances.
So
Um,
how do you decide each day how you're going to present?
Growing up, I had a big war inside me. Be a boy, be a girl. Be a boy, be a girl. Pick one and stay there. Well, the battlefield got really torn up, as it were. Some drinking, some drug use kind of thing.
Mhm.
Well, I had to call a truce. So no matter what comes out at that particular moment, comes out. It's just there, it just comes out. So some days are more masculine, other days are more feminine. Some days I wear, a suit. Other days I wear this. Yeah,
So, but that's just fashion.
that's fashion. Yeah.
That's just fashion. This is a little bigger than just fashion for her. Trust me. I know that
But
when I was
it must be an internal feeling.
Oh, yeah, it is, definitely. A few years ago, I was studying in London at Regency University. And, I go through the emails and I found one from a drag king at a nightclub called She, right in Soho, London. They invited me down. They said, "Oh, you have to come. You have to come." I'm like, "Okay." I dressed up, jeans, sneakers, black top, black T-shirt, and a plaid button-down shirt. Walked in there. I was just one of the guys. It was a lesbian bar, so they're pretty much 90% of them are butch women.
Oh, really?
I just walked in there as masculine and butch as I could be. I was raised male, so just me growing up.
They didn't see the male. They didn't even see a man. They
That's
saw
exactly.
a butch woman.
Hmm.
It was the context.
Yes.
What was her gender? What was her sex? Her sex is intersex. It's not male. It's not female.
Mhm.
What was her gender? Her gender changes according to the context.
Mhm.
How many boys can walk in there as butch as can be and pass as a butch lesbian?
Mhm.
Fascinating.
Males can't pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not really male, although I'm pretty close to it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't pull that off. I'm a man. I have a
Right.
sense of that. I identify with it as it. I'm a man among men. My context is man among males. I can't pull that off. I wouldn't have nowhere to start.
Well,
Trans women can't pull that off either. They
let's
think they do. I'll play football and I'll think that I'm butch enough to be a man, even though inside I'm going, what the fuck is this? No.
Well, Vickie,
That's
what
why
was
they end up transitioning. They have to. They don't do it because they want to. They do it because they have to. They are women.
well, and that's the difference that you're talking about between intersex and transgender.
Mm-hmm.
That people who are born transgender, like Wendy, know that they're a girl or know that they're a boy, and
Yeah.
you know you're neither and you're both.
Yes,
And that all
exactly.
Okay, get
that all
this.
comes back to the fact that our society does not
will not
Leaves-
acknowledge our reality.
and does not acknowledge that gender and sex are two different things.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Two separate things.
But we
And
do.
get this. I was born cisgender, just like you, then.
Right.
I identify with my birth sex, intersex. But then I'm trans because I transitioned from being
Right.
Victoria to Victor.
Against her will, the first transition.
Mm.
Right.
Surgery, name change, gender marker change, the whole bit.
Then the second transition was when she realized that trying to be a man did horrendous violence to her personality and her life. And she had to constantly be covering up her body because her body wasn't male. Being a woman, a female-ish woman, does less violence. That doesn't mean that it isn't violent. It does less violence. And in a society that only allows for either or, it was easier for her to transition to woman.
And then I had the last surgery, not because I wanted to transition to a woman, but because I needed
To female. It had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with the typical trans person's experience of it who
Different.
seeks surgery, which is, what the heck is this and where is my fill in the blanks?
Mm-hmm.
That's the brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a personality problem. That's the brain.
With me,
My husband lost a leg, for God's sake. He felt it to the end of his life.
and I still feel my penis. But the thing is, like I said, my penis wasn't removed because I felt I was a woman. It was removed because I could not pee, and the doctor couldn't save it.
Right.
Yeah.
After they
my
had,
penis.
after they carved up on it for years and years and years.
For years and years and
That
years.
caused it to
Tried to
fail.
make it male enough. What
Right.
is male enough?
So what else? Did you discontinue the testosterone then?
No, she had to discontinue the testosterone. It was poisoning her.
In fact, they did. They after was it 4 or 5 months on it, I think, or something like that. There was somewhere around there. I forget exactly which one. My body was shutting down.
Yeah.
I couldn't take it.
She was losing her kidneys and her liver, which is what
Yeah.
happens.
Trying to process all that.
Yeah. It was too
Yeah.
much work.
So they put me on spironolactone, like they did you, I'm sure, to get rid of the testosterone part. And now they put me on estrogen. Not to transition, not to be a woman, but because I had osteoporosis.
Oh,
You have to have adult hormones. You gotta have the red pill or the blue pill because they're not sex hormones. They're adult hormones.
I couldn't
Right.
take the blue pill.
She couldn't take the blue pill.
They gave me the pink one.
She had to have the pink one. She
I-
had to.
I'm on 1 milligram a day. That's a diet.
Okay.
That's not, like I said, it's not to be a woman. I'm already don't have any hair. It's like,
and is your body handling that okay?
oh yeah, quite well, thank you.
Good. Okay.
I broke 6 bones,
Oh,
and I dislodged 3 joints.
ouch.
Yeah, exactly.
All
Good.
due to the fact that they would not take her health into consideration, and all they cared about was making her male enough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, frightening.
When she was finally put on estrogen, she not only cured her osteoporosis, she didn't even have osteopenia. She doesn't have osteopenia right now,
Mm.
I'm on the very
Fine.
edge of it. Yeah.
but she's
Oh.
fine.
So you're healthy from that perspective. What was adolescence like when you're going through all these things when everybody else is, hormones raging and boyfriends, girlfriends, that kind of adolescent behavior? What was your adolescence like?
I got beaten up a lot.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because I was small. I looked effeminate, looked like a girl, that kind of stuff. So I got beaten up a bunch. But yeah, I had girlfriends. There's one girlfriend I had. Now, she's very nice. I actually treated her nice. I actually listened to her. Yeah, but she
She must have loved that.
I actually listened to her opinions, her thoughts, her goals, all that kind of stuff. You know, it was great. I met her parents. Her parents loved me. Perfect gentleman type of thing.
Perfect. Okay.
But she called it off because I wouldn't take it to the next level.
Yeah. So, Jim, what about your adolescence?
Oh, it was miserable. It was suicidal. On and off until they started me on the testosterone, because I envisioned myself as being Peter Pan.
Mhm.
I'm the boy who couldn't grow up.
Mhm.
Like they call it Peter Pan syndrome.
Mhm.
Yep, that's a psychological syndrome. Body wasn't growing up. Everybody else had raced on into adulthood. They all, at 15, they looked like adults. I
Mhm.
looked like I was 10.
Mhm.
I wasn't beaten up. People took pity on me. That wasn't good either.
No.
How'd you handle that psychologically?
So psychologically, I did it a day at a time. I had two things that got me through it. Star Trek
Same here.
A sci-fi fan, yes.
and the idea that the future could be better,
And
can be better, but I'll have to make it better. I would not have made it if my father had not found me a way into adulthood. I had already, I was going to get on the train the hard way.
mm, glad you didn't
And,
do it that way.
and I woke up every morning with the first question being, is today the day I leave for good?
Mm.
Because I can't take this anymore.
Were your parents aware of that going on with you?
My father was, my mother was not. My mother wanted me dead.
Because
I'm a freak.
you didn't fit?
And what's worse,
Wow.
when I was born, she literally gave me to my father and said, I can't deal with this.
Oh
He's
my
yours.
God.
He's yours. You raise him.
Wow.
So my brothers belonged to my mother, and I belonged to my father.
Talk about rejection at an early age.
And
I
you're all
wasn't dry yet. I'll just tell you one story. My mom was terrified of her own sexuality and her own gender. And she hated herself for it. And she especially hated me because I was undeniably queer. There was no hiding it. There was no escaping from it. And when I started taking the adult hormones that were going to make it possible for me to grow up, she called all of my friends' mothers. I was 15. This is high school. I was finally being accepted as one of them because I was finally growing up. I wasn't going to be a little boy for the rest of my life. My mother was terrified of it because I would sexualize. And so she called them, told them that I was a freak and that they should keep their sons and daughters away from me.
Oh, how
Because I
horrible.
would screw them up
Oh,
and confuse them and traumatize them by the freak that I am. That's what my mother did.
oh, Jim, I'm so sorry you had that
That's
experience.
horrible.
But don't feel
But
too sorry for me. Again, it's context. What was the context? It was 1973. It was David Bowie.
oh,
I became a rock star.
you had representation, you think.
I had representation in blue eyeshadow and orange hair. I did not get rejected. I became the perfect object of parental for every teenager in my high school. I became a rock star and I'm a performer. I sing.
So everybody loved you. They wanted to be around you. You're the cool guy.
Yeah. When I was little, I told my friends in the neighborhood that they couldn't tell anybody about me. I was like Superman. I had fallen to earth. My parents had found me in a pod, rescued me, and were raising me. And you couldn't tell any adults in your life because you knew from the Superman comics what would happen if people knew that there was an alien among them. And
You
then
were
I'd drop my pants and prove it.
You were a performer from the beginning, weren't you?
Yeah. I've never turned down a microphone or a spotlight in my life, and I never will. It's done good by me.
And you've done good by it.
I've done good by it.
By sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you both are speakers.
Yeah.
So tell us about the audiences you speak to. And what kind of reaction do you get?
We'll speak to anybody.
Yeah, I think at hospitals, universities, colleges, churches, schools,
Trans
whatever.
groups,
Trans groups.
gay groups.
What kind of reaction do you get from the audience?
Standing ovations every time. Are you kidding?
I bet.
I would accept nothing less.
And what kind of questions do they ask you? Maybe what are the top 3 questions that you always get asked?
By teenagers, I gave a speaking engagement out of high school. It's a whole panel thing. And 3 giggly girls came up to me afterwards and asked me, how do you pee? Basically, they wanted to know what was down there. And I told them, just like you, I sit down.
Interesting.
Yeah, they wanted to know what was down there. And then 3 other came up, and 2 more came up. Asked the same question.
See, the thing is, they never asked me that because I've already told them. Okay. A lot of intersex people have a whole lot of trouble with the fact that I do that. They think, nobody's business. Oh, grow up. We all know what a male body looks like. We all know what a female body looks like. We know what they have. Who the hell do we think we are to hide it from them?
Mm-hmm. I had the same experience with him in the bathroom. I stood there between 2 urinals, peeing both at the same time. One was my natural hole, which opened up sideways, and then the one on the top that was closing up but still open to the other one. And it's, yes, I'm an alien. Can't tell anyone.
My best friend had the same type of hypospadias surgery that she'd had. It was just one operation at the age of 8. No anesthesia.
Oh, God.
They ground a hole till they hit his urethra.
Oh.
Backed that up with a tube and then let that heal, having sewn his original urethra shut. They pulled the ureter out, and in less than a month, both holes were exiting urine. This was to make it possible for him to stand to pee. Before, but he couldn't after the surgery. Because now it was coming out of 2 holes, and one was going this way and one was going that way. He couldn't hit a toilet if he was standing in it.
So these medical interventions aren't really helpful, it doesn't sound.
They're not.
No, they're crap. It makes money. It makes money. That's all it does. And as long as they can convince people, as in insurance companies,
Right.
that they should pay for it, they can terrorize parents into subjecting their children to it.
Because then the parents have to consent, or
yes, parents consent. The child has no recourse. And that's why they do what they do.
I tried.
There is,
Right.
it makes money, and there is no way for their victims to get anywhere with it.
Back then, they needed the parents' permission, not informed consent.
Okay.
Oh, something is wrong with your baby. Don't worry, we can fix that. This is a quick, easy operation. Yeah,
You want your child to be normal, don't you?
the part they did tell them was that the boy had a very small penis. So they took off the penis and told the parents that they were a girl.
Okay, so the difference between permission and informed consent, and it doesn't sound like the parents were even informed.
In many, many cases, they were not.
When I was growing up,
Books have been written, excellent books documenting this. One by Katrina Karkazis. This has all been documented. This is not just us sitting here claiming this off the top of our heads or because we feel like it. We've got references.
Well, and you've researched this for years.
Yes.
my whole life for me, yeah.
So is there a book you want to share with our audience that you recommend?
Yes, there is. One is by a biologist and Hida Viloria, an intersex person.
Oh, I've read their book.
And it's nice, simple. You could be somebody who never learned a thing about biology at all. Read this and come away understanding intersex from a biological point of view. It's well done. The second book is by Sharon Preves. This is the book I tell everyone to read. It is so important. I was in tears through the whole thing because I didn't think there was anybody who got this. And she did. It's called Intersex and Identity, the Contested Self. I am this. No, you're not. I'll tell you what you are. I'll tell you what you're like. No. These are questions we should ask people. Who are you? What are you? What do you think? What do you feel? What do you like? But that isn't what the intersex get. That's not what the trans get. What we get is, I'll tell you what you are, who you are, what you like, what you think. I will tell you, and you'll do it. Or I will remove your inalienable rights as a human being. I will objectify you to the point where you do not exist. And I'll even cut up your body. And you'll have nothing to say about it.
So what happens when intersex people feel like they have to hide who they are?
Same thing that happens whenever anybody has to hide. It's the same thing that happened to my relatives, thinking they had to hide the fact that they were Jewish. It follows a pattern.
In terms of population, transgender is a very small percentage of the population.
Yeah.
What about intersex?
Huge.
That's what I was wondering.
Yes, it's huge.
Because it's part of a humanity as well.
Yeah.
Because it's biological.
Logical. Exactly.
Huge. It's like my friend who wrote her biography said, intersex isn't rare. It's just rarely ever heard of. That's the title of her book.
More common than redheads. Over 2% of the population.
Well, no, that's the one that they've handed out. That was before they'd identified 47 of the different flavors. And that was not taking into account all of us who've been hidden.
Right.
It only took into account those who could be counted. Anyone who'd been subjected to surgery, but it hadn't been recorded as intersex surgery, wasn't counted.
Right.
The majority of intersex people have not been counted. The majority of intersex people have not been subjected to surgery. The majority of intersex people may never even know they are. You can make it through your whole life being XXY. What could be more intersex than that? Are you a male with an extra X? Or are you a female with a Y? Either or, either are. No. I'll end. But it is possible to make it through your whole life being XXY and never knowing you are. How many of you had a test to prove what your genes and chromosomes are? I had an intersex friend in Batavia, and she's passed on. Her mother lied to her. She'd had surgery in the first year of life, transitioned. When her doctor was getting ready to transition her from male to female and was doing her surgical workup, he said, "You've already had extensive surgery. I can't do this. I want to talk to your mother."
And she never knew.
Her mother admitted, yes, she had been born with a penis, and they had removed her vagina and whatever else was in there, because they looked at that assigned her a boy, and if she ever told her, she'd commit suicide. And so here she was, transitioning from a man to a woman, and it had already been done the other way.
That would be hard to comprehend.
A little tough on her.
I'm
And
sure.
her mother didn't tell her, even though she was getting ready to have a vaginoplasty done. Her mother didn't repeat it because the doctors had so terrorized her mother.
Oh.
You see?
Well, and then there's stories like Hida's story that they didn't understand, didn't know there was anything different. Their mother didn't know there was anything different and went on through her life until discovering this. Because you're talking about so many differences in the anatomy and the, everything.
Anatomy, physiology, and genetics.
All of that. So there's not one little box that we can put intersex in.
No,
even if we're
the majority
even if
of
we accept there's a
people do not discover that they are intersex until they fail to go through puberty or fail to go through anticipated puberty, and instead
Have the wrong puberty.
get the wrong puberty. Balls at 12 is so common in places in Mexico that that's what it's called, balls at 12.
That's the nickname for it. Yeah, the actual name is 5-alpha reductase syndrome.
So is this someone who's assigned female at birth?
Yeah, they're assigned female at birth.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when they hit 12, some of them remain girls, because they are. Other ones, the balls start to drop because finally they're getting testosterone. So finally the balls are starting to drop and they start developing as boys.
Their penis grows out to its normal size, and their testicles descend into their scrotum, and they're expecting a period.
The good thing is, in that society, if you want to remain a girl, fine. Well,
They're allowed.
No, they're allowed to do that, have the surgery, you can remain a girl. Or if you want to transition to a boy, fine. You can transition to a boy, we'll give you a new name, and you can continue. There's no stigma about it or anything.
And this is in Mexico?
Yeah.
See, and that's what causes so many of the problems around here is that people trying to be forced to make a choice, not allowing people to be who they are.
The good thing about me living as a woman is on days I can be as butch as possible, butch as I want. Especially in this, we're in the farming community. There's a whole bunch of butch women here, and they work on farms. They're milking the cows, they're, plowing the, fields, they're doing all of that. And here I am every so often, I fix the fence, paint the garage, whatever. I do, fix all the stuff around.
She's not forced. Okay, so take the flip side of this, which is me.
Okay.
Some intersex people don't discover that they're intersex until puberty doesn't happen.
Or the wrong one.
Or the wrong one. But what happened to me is even queerer than that. I thought that I was a malformed male. Everybody thought I was a malformed male. I just didn't make it all the way. The idea was that my mother had been given large doses of progestin. But this is back when they did that. It was the 50s. They poisoned pregnant women left and right.
DES.
That's thalidomide,
Thalidomide.
DES,
Yes.
and progestin. Okay, so that's supposedly where my intersex comes from, except the fact that I'm also Jewish and congenital adrenal hyperplasia runs in that too. Big, big deal. So what the heck am I? Am I an unfinished male? Okay. I was 44 years old. Okay. Hang on to that number. That's important. I was 44 years old. I'm married to another man. I come down with the most god-awful case of viral infection that you could possibly imagine, genital herpes. It was not funny. I was obstructed. I couldn't pee because my whole urethra had
Drunk.
gone shut. It had healed shut, the whole length of it. It was one big canker sore. It was in my bladder. It was in my eyes. It was just unbelievable. I had a hell of a time recovering from this. I was on a lot of antivirals and stuff. When I healed up, something had changed. Something was different. I'd sit down and I'd get stabbing pains. I'd go to move in one direction or another, twisting and turning, and I'd get like something was cutting in between my legs. So I went to a urologist. It turns out I had a vagina and it was opening up.
At 44 years old.
44 years old. I had had an imperforate vagina. That means no hole. Because of the infection, an area had thinned down to the point where a hole was occurring. Urologist sent me to a urogynecologist.
Oh, wow.
That was a trip.
I can see you in the waiting room there.
Well, she was Grunhilde Buchsbaum with crazy glasses, okay? She brought me in as the last patient of the day, and there was nobody in the waiting room.
Oh, okay.
And so they examined me and said, first of all, you need to know, this means nothing. You are same person walked in here. You don't go crazy.
That was
This means
motivational
not you are a
speech.
woman. You're not a woman. The same person you walked in. You just know more about your body now. And this is what you need to know. I have to make the hole bigger. Because now there's a hole. If there's a hole, things get in. If things get in, bacteria grow, you get infections. I have to make it bigger so it can be flushed. So she gave me all of this information. I'm like,
Oh, God.
I'm a gay man
With a vagina.
with a vagina. All I heard was, you got a new piece of playground equipment. You're not a man minus anything. You are plus something.
And do we want to know the rest of the story, or is that where you're going to stop with that one?
That's where I'm going to stop. But you're going to
Okay.
know the rest of the story. I had a ball. I still do but eventually I found the husband who would last the rest of his life.
Well, we're getting to the end of our time.
Mhm.
But is there anything you want to share with the audience that we haven't touched on yet?
Yes.
Okay.
There is something that Vickie and I have encountered that's giving us agita. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
It has to do with language, and it has to do with the way we are forced to fill out forms in the current time. We made about 6 months of collecting forms that conflate sex and gender. What is your gender, male or female? And I'm not on that list. I am not male and I am not female, and neither is she, and There's no way that most intersex people could honestly check off one of those boxes because most of us are, in fact, infertile.
And people are being forced.
Before you start underlining that either or, remember, we are non-reproductive by and large. And sex is about making orgasms, not about having babies. That changes everything. Non-reproductive people, whether it's two men or two women together, or whether it's anyone together with somebody who is sterile, sex stops being about the possibility of a pregnancy, a 20 to 30-year commitment to be there as second best in your own life, because when you have a child, the child is first. I know that from adoption. You become number two in your own life, to yourself. When somebody else is making that decision for you and forcing it upon you, you can see how we don't like things forced on other people.
My doctor, when I first met her here, asked me, what's your gender? And I told her, tomboy. That is a gender. Like feminine, masculine, butch, effeminate. Those are genders.
It was the best she's ever done with that in her life. It's the thing she should be, that they should put that on her tombstone. Tomboy, just that.
But they didn't have a checkbox for that.
Yeah. Sometimes I put intersex under a gender. Or do you identify as intersex?
Yeah, no.
You can't.
You cannot identify as intersex.
Right.
You could identify as intergender, just like you cannot identify as male. You cannot identify as female. That's the wrong question. The question is, what is your sex? Not what is your identity. You see?
And that would be either male, female, intersex.
My sex. This is why I describe myself as a gay intersex man. Man is my gender. Gay is my sexual orientation plus my romantic orientation and my culture.
Okay.
Intersex is my sex. I wasn't born with ovaries or testicles, as far as I know for sure. And therefore, I don't have a male or female sex. I never did. It is just as my mother told me. You're a boy, but you can't grow up to be a father. For you to be a father, you must adopt. But there are lots of children to adopt, so don't worry.
The sex you're talking about is the anatomy,
The
physical part of who you are.
Exactly.
Yes.
Is that right? And that's
whether or not I have the ability to squirt out gametes into someone's vagina who is making eggs, and she comes away pregnant 9 months later, we together made a conception and she's given birth and we have a child. That is not part of my wheelhouse.
Yes.
There.
Even
I can't get any clearer than that. And yet it goes over people's heads without even slowing down.
Exactly.
And it is that conflation between sex and gender. People don't know what their own sex is, even when they are male or female and have children. They still don't get it.
So how do we bridge
I don't know what to do with that.
How do we bridge that gap? When people can't comprehend or don't want to comprehend, what can we do to bridge that gap?
The one thing that all of this has in common is that people don't know what intersex is. They don't know that it exists. They don't know that it's real. They don't know what it means. They don't know that the United Nations has, in fact, only defined it in the last 15 years. It's only 15 years old that we even had an official definition of the word
Worldwide.
Least known of in the USA. Why do you suppose that is?
Yeah.
We have problems here talking openly and honestly about sex, about everyone's sex and gender and personality and get rid of the or, embrace the all and of all of us. And we'll get along better, and it'll look more and more like the Federation of Planets and less like what we got, which is totalitarian, authoritarian.
Yeah, people trying to force choices on other people.
Oh, it's just death. You know, my first boss was from Yugoslavia, and he'd lived under both the Soviet Union and the Nazis. He said, I tell you what he's like. Punishment is all the time punishment. All the time you get punishment. You do very good job, you get a little less punishment.
Ooh.
I can still see him. I can still hear him. That's what it's like here. Yeah, punishment. All the time punishment.
Yep.
Well, we will do
get a little less punishment. But we can't do it without talking. And we can't do it without talking openly and honestly. Like it counts, because it does. One of the words that the kids have right now, I hate this whole approach, is the embrace of defining things by what they're not, instead of defining things by what they are. This drives us crazy. None of you are non-binary. Find a better word. We don't define things by what they're not. We define things by what they are. That's not a definition. And it will bite you all in the ass in the end. Just trust me. I'm 68. I've been at this a long time.
Do you have a solution for that term?
Of course.
Yes.
You're not non-binary. You're all and. It's not what you're not. It's what you are.
What you are.
You are little bits and pieces of everything that can be. There are 30 trillion individual life forms that make up your body. Each of them is born, lives a life, and dies and is replaced. That's what you are. You are a collection of single-celled animals. You are also one of the most complex composites in existence. And you have the ability of self-reflection. You have an identity. You can think about what it means to be you. You can think about what it means to think about thinking about being you.
That's a good challenge for our
How many
audience
ways backwards and forwards can you go? All of them. That's the point. All and. 30 trillion of them, and none of them is over 7 years old.
Okay.
A while ago, there's 3 or 4 of us who were interviewed for a book. Now, Cynthia Mulit and my late wife, both looking for help for intersex people, for not the body-wise, but for their mental health. Neither of them could find anything. There is a lot of psychologists know a lot about trans people, about transitioning, all that kind of thing, but nothing about intersex, nothing about being forced to transition, nothing about trying to have a gender identity, be forced into a gender identity that's not theirs. Thus, shame, secrecy, forced surgeries, genital mutilation by doctors. You know, we lived through all that. A lot of trans people don't. Hopefully you haven't. So what Cynthia Mulit has done was she did her whole dissertation on that.
And me too. And my story is the opposite. So there were actually 3 of us.
Yeah. It's called Intersex Experiences, Activists, Perspectives, and Counseling Implications.
That was her PhD thesis. It's not actually a published book.
Oh,
It's
okay.
She's working on
making it to the bar.
train therapists. We don't have any.
We have none either.
Right.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of therapists out there don't even understand transgender either.
Yeah.
True, exactly. Even the ones who work with transgender people
Don't.
know about intersex. Oh, you want to transition? I already did. When? 8 months? Oh, 8 months ago? No.
8 months old. Oh.
What do you mean? You can't do that. You gotta go through all this. Sorry.
No, we need to wind up today, but I'm sure the audience is going to want your contact information. So
And they can have
Oh, yeah,
mine.
they can have it.
okay, so we'll put that on
Email
there.
address, contact through Facebook, Instagram.
Okay, and
You can
then
contact me any of those ways.
I
Okay.
do some life coaching. Semi-professionally. I hope to make that professionally. But I do offer it. But I also just talk. And I could put people in touch with others
oh,
who, I mean, if there's someone who's having difficulty with something I don't know anything about, I
okay.
can put them in touch with somebody who does.
Right.
So you're a great resource, Jim.
I'm a resource.
Okay,
And
we will.
as you know, I'm a certified peer support specialist. I can actually understand what the person's going through because I've been there.
Oh,
I've done it.
yes.
I'm
You
not
have
a
the lived
psychologist, but
experience.
I know, yeah, I have more experience than any psychologist out there. So yeah, I know what the
Okay.
person's definitely going through.
While Cynthia Mulit hopes to correct that.
And
Someday
we hope to
soon.
do our part by broadcasting this episode today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. I cannot thank the 2 of you enough.
Yeah, thank you very much for this.
Well,
Thank you for coming today. This was great.
This was fabulous. And so unfortunately, it's time we have to close this out. Wish we could spend another few hours doing this. There's so much
I'm so
more.
glad we had this time together.
Oh, there's that entertainer, Jim. So, as we're closing this out, I keep thinking about the harm that thrives in confusion and silence and unspoken words and half-truths. You just brought so much of that to mind today. And you've helped educate us today and reminded us that intersex is real, it's human, it's not rare, it's just rarely discussed. And it's time to start discussing some of that. So to our audience, if you're listening and you're feeling a little unsettled, that may be the most honest response of all. So let that discomfort expand your compassion and your empathy instead of just tightening your certainty that you know everything that you need to know because this is what you've been told by some person of authority. Jim talks about reflection. So reflect on the things that we've talked about today. And, you've been taught that the world is either or, and instead you want the both and, all and. So keep thinking about that. And Jim and Vickie, thank you for your courage, your clarity, and your refusal to be erased. Speaking up, thank you. So again, to our listeners, thank you. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of our fascinating interviews. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. So until next time, stay curious and stay kind.